Welcome to Green Building Matters, the podcast that matters for green building professionals. Learn insight in green buildings as we interview today's experts in LEED and WELL. We'll learn from their career paths, war stories, and all things green, because green building matters. And now our host, and yes, he has every LEED and WELL credential. Here's Charlie Cicchetti.
Be sure to check out the Green Building Matters community, where you can have unlimited exam prep for any of the professional credential exams you're tackling next, as well as putting your continuing education on autopilot, saving time with GBS reporting your hours on your behalf. Check it out, gbes.com/join. Now, enjoy this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Cicchetti. And today we've got an Atlanta sustainability professional. I've been wanting to have Mandy on for a while, and we've got it nailed down. But Mandy Mahoney's joining us. We're going to talk a lot about sustainability in the Southeast and in and around Atlanta. Mandy, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm glad to be here.
And, can't wait to unpack a little bit about some of your advanced degrees, even your law degree, and how'd you get into policy, and a little bit of your time with the city of Atlanta, of course, on the sustainability front. But I always like to ask, hey, where'd you grow up and where'd you go to school?
Well, I am a Maconite. I grew up in Macon, Georgia, and Macon is an hour away from Atlanta and a world away. It is definitely the South, and that serves me well in the work SEEA does, because SEEA serves 11 states, Virginia to Arkansas to Florida, and it's fun living here in the big city of Atlanta, but I'm also very thankful that I grew up in the Deep South to have the insights of what it was like to be there.
Absolutely. And then stuck around for college. Tell us a little bit about those days and some of your degrees.
Yeah. So I went to Emory for undergraduate and double majored in biology, and also I was the first bachelor's of science graduate in the environmental studies degree program. And I was very proud of that. And I got to focus on ecology at Emory, and that exposed me to a wonderful way to see the world. I was taught how to read ecosystems through learning about, the native ecosystem.
Yeah. So, growing up here in Atlanta, and I've been in Georgia most of my life. I know you had Macon, you chose to go to Emory undergrad, and then we could talk Duke. But tell me about just, again, being outside of Atlanta and then coming to Atlanta and Emory for school.
Yeah, so growing up in Macon, I went to Catholic school. And what's so interesting about many of the Catholic schools in the Deep South is that they were established before integration. And they were some of the first schools that were integrated. And the schools I went to in Macon I was taught by nuns, the Sisters of Mercy. And Macon waited to desegregate their schools until 1974, the last year allowable by federal law. But the Catholic schools in town had been integrated for much longer since before that. And that was a conscious choice by the Catholic Church. And that showed up very early in my education. I can remember clearly, second grade, Sister Bernadette teaching us about social justice. And was a theme throughout my education as an elementary child. And as I got into middle school and in high school, and I thought about true social justice, what built my philosophy that I still live by now is that everyone deserves access to clean air, clean water, arable land. And that is what has shaped my career even today. And that is what took me into majoring in environmental studies in addition to biology at Emory, and then pursuing a degree in law and environmental management at Duke.
That's amazing. You're right. I think we think of more common civil rights, but not that access that sometimes we even take for granted here in the United States versus some third world countries. So I can't wait to hear more about that. But, would you say, Mandy, that was a moment there, and that's why you knew you wanted to get that master's on the environmental side and back it up with some law? So tell us how that continued there.
So when I was in ninth grade, I started working with sea turtles on the Georgia coast on Wausau Island. It's a project that still goes on today. The Coretta Research Project is the oldest tagging project in the U.S. And it was amazing that as a high schooler, I could go and volunteer on Coretta with actual scientists and get to learn all the things that go into field research and go into sea turtle conservation. And I thought that I would probably do that for my career until I was working on Jekyll Island during college. And one day, 32 dead sea turtles washed up on the beach. And under federal law, under the Endangered Species Act, you have to do an autopsy on endangered species that wash up on the beach. And what that means is you have to open up that 500-pound dead sea turtle and read through its insides to find what killed it. Well, the only reason a sea turtle washes up on the beach is because it has decayed on the inside. So it's a balloon, 500-pound balloon by the time it gets to the beach. And you can only imagine how bad that smells. And so, yes, that one day we got to dissect 26 sea turtles. We found nothing inside of them because all of them drowned from being caught in nets that were not properly fitted with turtle excluder devices. And these were Asian shrimping boats that would come in under the cover of darkness and shrimp. And because we do not have sufficient resources to support the Georgia Department of Environmental Protection to patrol and enforce the laws effectively, it was just one day that this amount of damage could be done. And unfortunately, there were a few weeks where all along the Georgia coast, there were these incredible stranding events that happened. And what that taught me was that the laws just are not good enough. And that was the moment that I decided, I'm going to go back to law school and get a law degree and yes.
Go in. Yeah. That was going to be your career path. Love it how you've connected those dots there, Mandy. Well, did anyone else have any influence there? Did you have any mentors, anyone you looked up to or some work you followed? Anyone open some doors for you there so far?
Yeah, I was so fortunate that all throughout my life that I had mentors that were willing to give me an opportunity to learn by being in the field with them. And the opportunity to get to do real scientific field work from such an early age gave me confidence in my abilities, sparked a lot of curiosity. I learned how to just really be myself and find my confidence and find my voice. And so Chris Williams, who still runs the Coretta Research Project today, has always been a friend and mentor. Eloise Carter was one of my major professors in botany as an undergrad, as well as John Wagner at Emory. And all of them were just always so kind and supportive and willing to spend the time to talk with me and just further my own curiosity. And I think that that's what I try to do now for the young people that I mentor. It's not about what I've learned. It's more about helping them think about how to explore their hopes and dreams and make a difference in the world.
I love it. That's so great. We'll connect a few dots there. So tell us about, some of the career path and maybe some of the work you've done with the city of Atlanta. And then, of course, I want to do a deeper dive on all the work you've been doing there for the last 9 or 10 years with SEEA. So
great.
Tell us some more about that career journey.
So I'm probably one of the only people you will ever meet that has gone to 3 law schools. After finishing at Emory, the environmental studies textbooks literally had Atlanta bad, Portland good when you would read about city planning. And so I decided that I needed to ship myself to Portland and learn about why it was so great because I liked Atlanta. And so I started at the most liberal law school in the nation, Lewis and Clark, knowing I would do my master's in environmental management at Duke. And after my first year, so I went after the first year, went to Duke. And then it was really amazing, the synergies of doing the joint degree there. So I transferred, was at Duke Law School. And it was at Duke when I was doing both degrees that I got very interested in clean energy and climate change policy. I had not been exposed to that in undergrad, just wasn't part of the curriculum. And I realized that if you look at the real pain points driving the world today, it revolves around how we consume resources to produce electricity and to make things move. And that is what drives greenhouse gas emissions. And so I got so excited about that opportunity and learning and meeting people in the field. And I also figured out I did not want to practice law and I was going to have a lot of student loan debt. And so I needed to do something about that. So I got a wonderful job opportunity here in Atlanta to work for a gentleman who had just sold his business in the real estate field, a gentleman named Ray Weeks, and he was discerning what he wanted to do professionally as well as with his family's philanthropic dollars. And so I worked as his researcher. And at that point, Mayor Shirley Franklin was the mayor here in Atlanta. And she had a very good track record of starting major projects with the help of business and academic government. And one of those projects is what we now love here in Atlanta called the Atlanta Beltline. She tapped Ray to be the business person leading that. And so I had the opportunity to be a part of that project at the very earliest days. And I decided that it made much more sense for me to transfer to Emory to finish my law degree because I could tell that that opportunity to work on the Beltline was a once-in-a-lifetime project. And so I went to law school full-time to finish my JD as well as worked full-time. And it is certainly one of the best things I've ever done. I learned so much and I met my husband through the project, which is wonderful for that. And I got to know a lot of people in the administration. And that is what allowed me, when Mayor Franklin decided she wanted to address sustainability as one of her final projects, that I was fortunate to be tapped as the first director of sustainability for the city of Atlanta.
Wow. And for those that are listening that haven't been through Atlanta yet, the Beltline is one of the best projects we have around our city, and just the green space and the stimulus development around it all. So I'm glad that you've had a hand in that, and we're early in the sustainability at the city of Atlanta. And that's a good question I wanted to follow up with is, what are some other accomplishments, Mandy? If you look back on the highlight reel, what else has stood out? What are you really proud of?
I have been fortunate to be risk-seeking in terms of finding new opportunities to address sustainability. And because this field is very young still. And so I'm thankful to be at the early edge of a lot of the developments. And when I look at what we created in the first phase of sustainability at the city of Atlanta, I look at how we put in place the first telework programs. And that mattered to me so much because when we did a map of how far city employees were commuting in, there were a significant number of people who were commuting well over an hour. And that's just silly. You waste so much of your productive life by commuting. And it's also a safety concern. Like when I was at the city, there was a different threat of virus, but it was a need to be able to ensure people could telework to keep the city operations going. And I think about that. With the coronavirus facing us now, not only do we need to be able to telework so that we can reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions and improve people's quality of life, but also just so that we can keep our basic functions going. And in terms of the city's building footprint, and that was the first time we did the city's carbon footprint. It was the first time that we got a very clean list of what buildings the city owned, what buildings the city did not own, and mapped all of the electricity and gas accounts so that we could get a handle on what the city was using, therefore what the carbon emissions were, therefore where there were opportunities for savings. And by getting that data, we were able to empower departments to, for the first time ever, understand their budgets, understand these cost centers. And what I found is people really did want to address climate change. Even 10 years ago it was the topic. But they didn't have the information to make decisions. And so being able to provide people with basic tools was very rewarding.
It's amazing. Yeah, that's definitely on the highlight reel. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk a little bit about today. What's keeping you busy? What kind of fun projects are you working on? And tell us more about SEEA.
So SEEA, the Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance, is a 501c3 nonprofit based in Atlanta, and we serve 11 states, Virginia to Arkansas to Florida. And our core is in our name. We work on energy efficiency policy, and it doesn't stop there. We also do a tremendous amount on electric transportation policy, and we look at the intersection of energy efficiency and electric transportation as it addresses climate change, resilience, and health impacts. We work hard on focusing on supporting those at the lower end side of the economic spectrum, because that is an area, if you just think about it from the building stock in the South, We have a lot of old buildings. We have a lot of buildings that were built before any sort of code. And so they are not the best buildings to live in or to occupy if you're as a business. And we want to work on supporting the upgrade of existing infrastructure so that we can have a better and more resilient economic base in the South and a healthier population.
And, those states, I'm just curious, how were those identified? Are there, other groups that are handling other states? How is all this divided up? Kind of, what does that come down from?
Yeah, SEEA is a regional energy efficiency organization, and we do have sister organizations throughout the country. And our footprint was determined in 2005 by a coalition of groups ranging from South Base, the Department of Energy, the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, who came together and recognized that the energy efficiency organizations in the other parts of the country served those regions well, and that the South would be served well too by having one. And they defined the South as Virginia to Arkansas to Florida.
Got it. That's funny.
Yeah, there's another group that serves Texas and Oklahoma. Because oftentimes people will think
that's in the South, yeah,
serve Texas. And it was just not a part of our original document or founding document.
Let me ask about EV. I'm a fan of electric vehicles. I had a Chevy Volt for a couple of years. Georgia had some great incentives, and I've had a Nissan Leaf for about 5.5 years. So is it true, Mandy, that Atlanta is still one of the leading cities for number of electric vehicles on the road? Maybe San Francisco is still ahead of us. How are we doing with electric vehicles here in Atlanta and maybe the Southeast?
The city of Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, is not where we were when we had the tax credits. We, as context for the listeners, Georgia had a very rich incentive for electric vehicles, passenger vehicles, and that led Atlanta to be the number one EV city for a number of years. But then the governor believed that it was a hit to the tax base and eliminated it. And after that, we saw a precipitous drop off in the amount of EVs. That has begun to change again. We are now seeing an uptick, and Atlanta still is high on the list of cities, but there are other cities that are more vehicles than we do. In the region, Miami is the number one city in terms of electric vehicle penetration. And Miami, interestingly enough, is number 3 in the country for quantity of electric vehicles, just New York and LA.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's fantastic. A lot of our listeners here are architects, engineers, contractors, a lot of new construction, lead projects, some property managers, for example, on the existing building side. But how would some of the policy you and your team work on? Maybe where are they going to see that? Is that what's getting adopted by their towns and their cities? Where are we seeing some of your work? Where does it impact our buildings the most?
Building energy codes is a core focus of SEEA's work. And we believe that it's essential to adopt the most recent energy code and also properly educate the stakeholders, the building officials, so that it's effectively implemented. And so we work on both the adoption as well as the implementation and the compliance of building codes. One thing we're very proud of is in Florida, for instance, we have a circuit rider who goes around and trains the local government officials on the Florida Building Code. And she's a resource available not just for that one training, but they can call her up, they can talk to her about it. And we have found that that is absolutely an essential resource to ensure that the local officials know what they are to permit or not. We would like to see that in more states and in more jurisdictions, because we often hear complaints about permitting processes, effective. And I know that's a real thorn in the side of the building community. We would also like to see the South be able to go beyond the base level energy code. We're very excited about zero energy codes and in the most recent adopted IECC code. We don't believe that's going to be adopted by communities, states in the South soon, but we would like to see it be adopted because we think it's important. The other thing I want to highlight is that we still have a state in our region that does not have a building code. Would you like
that's not good. I interview some from some other countries around the globe on the podcast, but I didn't realize that here. I guess you're uncovering some things that who would have thought that was the case.
There is still a chunk of states, and the one in the South is Mississippi. So Mississippi does not have a building energy code statewide. They have some storm codes from the South that were courtesy of Katrina, but you really see it in the quality of construction in that state, unfortunately.
I had Dan Burgoyne with the state of California policy on, and, California, obviously a leader lining up for 2030 and more net zero buildings. But, that's kind of part of my next question to you, especially as a policymaker. If you had a crystal ball, Mandy, where do you think this green building movement is shifting? I mean, you can talk a little more about anything on your mind, but especially with net zero, if I'm in the state of Georgia right now, I've got a lot of developers that probably think it's far-fetched to think we're going to be required to have some net zero buildings in the next 10 years. But I mean, we're going to have to, right?
I hope we will. I don't know, though. I think for Georgia, I don't know if I share your optimism that we'll see a zero energy code. I do know that there are a lot of voluntary efforts going on in Georgia because we have leading builders here and leading architects. And those people are critical to setting the foundation so that policymakers have the political cover and the courage to adopt the leading edge policy.
That's a good word, courage. No, you're right. Well, let's talk. What else, though, do you think is coming? What should me and the listeners here on the Green Building Matters podcast, what should we be reading up on? What else are you tracking?
We think that there are a couple areas that are evolving. One, you can't ignore how the conversation around resilience has found its legs in the South.
Absolutely.
And if you look at language choices by policymakers, currently, for instance, Florida, there's still a substantial amount of building going on. We've been tracking the resilience bills going through the legislature this cycle there. And we have a Republican governor, Republican leadership in the legislature. And for the first time in Florida, you have a chief resiliency officer appointed by this governor. And there are significant resilience bills that will get adopted. And when you look at what they're talking about, it's really languages around storm hardening and being able to survive storms. And so I would say that is something for your listeners to watch out for in Florida. In our other states like North Carolina and Virginia, where this is also a hot topic, those states, because you have Democratic leadership there, they have a more balanced approach around looking, in addition to hardening, but also looking at adaptation. And so I think that I would just caution listeners to understand the state context if they're trying to work in the policy arena around buildings in the face of resilience.
No, here in Atlanta, the mayor's office of sustainability even changed their name, right, to the office of resiliency. So that's just another indicator.
Yes, I love that too. I would like for all of the sustainability offices to be called because sustainability, like when you think about it, do you really want to just sustain your life or do you want to be resilient?
That's a pretty powerful word. And, there's nothing greener than reusing buildings and buildings that last a lot longer, et cetera, et cetera. So preparedness. This is a great conversation. And, because when I, kind of talk to someone maybe getting out of college, I let them know about the real estate movement, green buildings, maybe even renewables. But I'm going to talk a lot about policy. That's why I'm really excited to have you on here. And, I just want to ask you a few more questions, Mandy. For one is, what's your specialty or gift? What do you think you're really good at?
I enjoy bringing people together who have supposed different points of view and finding the magic and where there is alignment and win-win solutions. Because I find in the policy landscape, when we have something that does feel win-win, it's more durable. It's easy to get a win that you can celebrate and be short-lived because it becomes a target for the other side the next cycle. It's a lot harder to think about the long game and to strike a deal that is durable. And here in Georgia, I think that the solar community has done a masterful job in our state. And they would tell you they still have a long way to go. But if you look at the gains they've made over the last 10 years, they've been durable gains that have lasted and been able to be built on.
That is a gift. And now when you're bringing people together, do you have any pro tips do you try to get everybody to be able to speak up? I mean, how do you really extract some different opinions and have some true collaboration? Any tips there to make sure everybody feels included?
A lot of pre-work. of the elegance in the meeting is generated by all of the work that is done in advance. It's like hosting a dinner party. You want to make sure that people know what to wear, know that their food preferences are going to be honored, that they are going to get to sit next to somebody that they enjoy, that it's going to be a fun environment. Public policy is no different. People want to be in a community where they feel heard, where they feel supported. So that just means you got to spend a lot of time with them one-on-one in advance, understanding what their needs and desires and their hopes and dreams are so that they feel well supported coming into whatever the meeting or the conversation is.
That was an amazing analogy. Thank you. That was really good. Well, do you have any routines or rituals, Mandy, that help you stay on point, help you stay successful? Any good additional pro tips there?
I'm very thankful for my meditation routine. I start every day with meditation. It ranges in what kind of meditation I do. This morning, I did a body scan meditation that allows me to feel grounded in whatever energy is going on that day, and then be able to unpack, am I feeling anxiety? Am I feeling excitement? Am I feeling sick? Like what's going on? And then I'm able to be more aware and more present throughout my day. Another form of meditation I really enjoy is a Buddhist practice called metta meditation, loving kindness meditation. And that allows me to think about and set intentions for my loved ones, but also create a space to be present to people that I might not be able to be in a constructive relationship with, and find benevolence for people who I may not see eye to eye with, so that I can figure out ways to effectively work with them.
A lot of wisdom in there. That was fantastic. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about bucket list. I'm a big fan, actually, Mandy, of the bucket list. I've got a lot of cool things on there. And so I'm just curious, is there one or two things you could share that might be on your bucket list?
Yes, and this will show you how much of an climate and energy geek I am. They go back to the work we do here at SEEA. So
that's okay.
I would really like to see that electric transportation is an assumed consideration in all new buildings, so that it is not something you have to go back in and engineer for a lot of money when you decide that you want to provide EV charging at your business or to have EV charging at your house. And I know the new IECC code considers that, and we have a EV ready ordinance here in Atlanta. I would like to see that just be a universal thing. And then secondly, energy burden is not something we've talked about much yet today, but energy burden in core concept is the quantity of your monthly income that goes towards paying your energy bills, paying your light bills. And it's considered 3% is a sustainable amount for a family. And the Southeast has a disproportionately high energy burden. We have disproportionately high energy bills. And some of the lowest income communities here in Atlanta, people are paying 13 to 15% of their monthly income to paying their utilities.
Wow.
You can only imagine if you're paying that much for utilities, how that takes away from your ability to pay for prescriptions, food, the basics. And so we are working with Georgia Power and with the Atlanta Housing Authority, the city of Atlanta, to support new and different ways to get at that energy burden. And so that would be my dream, that people have acceptable, sustainable energy bills.
Yeah, I had no idea that it was high. Of course, you assume power's a little cheaper here. Electricity's a little cheaper in the Southeast and in Georgia. But, obviously air conditioning, a lot more cooling season and heating season, not as many milder. I get it. It adds up fast. So I'm glad you're working on that. And that's just part of the conversation about the socioeconomic side of sustainability and resiliency. So it sounds like that is part of what you guys do. I got to get out of you. Do you like to travel? Hey, what's one country or one place you want to go to? What else personally would be on the bucket list?
I would like to go to all of the places that I do not think will be here in 50 years.
All right. Touche. Wow. That's good. All right.
I have a 6-year-old. We took him to Venice last year.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely one of them. Let's talk about books. Just a couple more questions here. I'm not sure if you like to listen to books or pick up a good hard copy. Is there a book or two you recommend?
I just finished the book Salt. It came out like 10 years ago or so.
Cool.
It is the world according to the history of salt. And it was a fascinating study in natural resource consumption because I never thought about how essential salt was pre-refrigeration. It's not in the South. Nobody lived in the South with air conditioning. I live here now. And similarly, salt is one of those things that made and broke kingdoms. And we just take it for granted now. And there were salt monopolies similar to how we have utility monopolies now. And so I wonder about once we shift to a truly distributed grid or distributed resources on the grid, will we be laughing one day, oh, electricity was that? Can you imagine it was monopoly at one point? It clearly was when salt was a monopoly. People could not have imagined any other existence.
I had no idea. All right. Well, we're going to put a link to that book in our podcast show. Thank you for sharing. As we start to wrap up, I have a two-part question. One, first, Mandy, any career advice you wish you'd have known a little earlier?
It's okay to want to be happy. It's okay to want to follow something that really gives you joy. Working in this field can be a slog, and you need to follow something that sparks your interest every day, that you want to learn about when you're tired, that you want an event you want to go to just because it's fun. And I think that can serve you very well in this field.
I love it. Wow. Sometimes you have to give yourself permission, right? That's okay. Yeah. And in closing, so green building movement, maybe even policy related, any words of encouragement for someone jumping in right now to this movement?
There is more opportunity than ever before to advance the green building space. So figure out what you love in it, and you will find an affinity group and use that to just make some magic.
Wow. Mandy, thank you so much. This has been Mandy Mahoney, big footprint, very green footprint across Atlanta and the Southeast. Just want to say thank you. Keep up the great work at SEEA, and thanks for being on the podcast. This was awesome.
Thank you, Charlie.
I just want to say thank you to our loyal listeners. We actually are celebrating over 1 year here on the Green Building Matters podcast. Me and the entire team were stoked and just so glad you continue to listen every Wednesday morning to a new interview with a green building professional here in this industry, or just some pro tips that we want to make sure that you are getting straight from us, straight to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At gbes.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode. And you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.